What's up, guys? Thanks for joining me here today. Hey, I'm really excited because I've got a very special guest today with me here. I've got Sean Koppel, who some of you might know, some of you might not know. I know that I didn't know about him until a couple of months ago. I actually got referred to his site from a student of mine who, of course, is always looking for good PLO training material. Got on his email list, kind of liked what he had to say. And truthfully, what really piqued my interest was that he was talking a lot about PLO MTTs. And, with the World Series around the corner, of course, with Scoop next month, a lot of you guys are going to be playing PLO MTTs. And traditionally, PLO MTTs are always sort of the, they're always the tournaments that like No Limit guys randomly play that they don't take very seriously. They just kind of like hop into a PLO MTT. But frankly, as is the case with cash games right now, PLO MTTs can be much softer than no limit tournaments, right? There's a lot of bad no limit regs, and hey, there's a lot of bad PLO regs too. So I thought it would be cool to bring Sean on here, especially since he's kind of the PLO MTT expert, and educate us a little bit about PLO MTTs, talk a little bit about his site, and also just get to know Sean a little bit more. As you know, my mission is to connect with as many players, coaches, whoever, to anyone who's as passionate about PLO as I am. So I from chatting a little bit with Sean on Skype, I can tell he's very passionate about PLO. So I wanted to get to know him a little bit, allow him to educate you guys, give you some good tips about how to play PLO MTTs, how to play short stacks. So without further ado, Sean, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you're up to, and maybe how you got into PLO and a little bit more information about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm coming to you from Rio de Janeiro. Originally from California, though. I kind of got into poker the usual way for a dinosaur like me in poker. I'm 31, so it started when I was in college playing for beer money with my friends and all that. Found out about online poker, deposited some money, teetered around, trying to figure stuff out. Lost my initial $50 deposit, put another 50 on, and from there, here we are chatting.
Right.
And, started off playing no limit cash games, played some limit hold'em, sit and goes, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually moved over to PLO because another friend of mine in school started playing it also. And he was like, dude, you got to check this out.
Right.
And it was just more fun, more action, better games than no limit. And I've stuck to just playing PLO since, 2008.
Okay. Very nice. So what kind of stakes are you currently grinding, or where are you playing? I know that the videos that you put out on your site are of you playing at Stars. Is that where you mostly play, or is that what you prefer to play? And what kind of stakes are you grinding nowadays?
Yeah, so I'm playing mostly mid-stakes. A lot on Stars, but also on the other European sites, mostly from 2.4 to 10.20.
Mm-hmm.
The training videos, I think, playing in Zoom games is just a good way to get some volume in, get some hopefully interesting hands in, and so that the viewer isn't so bored watching, because there can be lulls in the action, as you know.
Right, yeah, I've definitely experienced that on Twitch, right, where it's like I'm four-tabling on ACR, and it can be tough for people to see, and Zoom is definitely the best for educational content. I agree. So, tell me about your experience a little bit with MTTs. Like, why should people listen to what you have to say about MTTs? And like, how did you, I've got several cash game products, right? And I would say my specialty is PLO cash games, and that's kind of what I grind. But, I do get a lot of people that are like, hey, do you, know where I can find some good PLO MTT stuff? So why did you decide to make videos and courses specifically about PLO MTTs?
So I actually thought that the stuff that's out there for PLO cash games is actually quite good. Like your stuff, I've gone through one of your courses, Out of Position Mastery, and got a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. And there's some other people doing some good stuff as far as cash games go, and nobody seemed to be talking about MTTs and also, playing short stack PLO. And, at least for the last couple of years now, I still mostly play PLO cash games, but those cash games, especially 5-10 and up now, the effective stacks very often are right around 40 big blinds.
Right.
And knowing how to play that effectively, not just because it translates well to tournaments, but because you'll be facing those scenarios in today's cash games online really, really often.
Right.
To play those spots well, it's just going to have a massive impact on your win rate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look, for example, at ACR and definitely in the Stars lobby and pretty much everywhere, there's a lot of short buy-in tables, and I think that there's a lot of advantages to playing short. So I think that it's an interesting approach. So we'll get more into the strategy about PLO MTTs here in a few minutes, but I want to start off talking about your experience with PLO coaching. I know that personally, a lot of the advancements and aha moments that I've had in my game have been made because of the deep discussions I've had with my students. So can you tell me what the biggest benefits that you've gotten from coaching have been?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely grow as a player, and I think as a person also from my coaching. And so I started coaching like about a year and a half ago on the recommendation of a friend of mine. And I wasn't sure I was going to like it, to be honest. I'd never really done it before. I'd been on the receiving end of some coaching, but had never taught others. But I really liked it. I liked helping other people and seeing them improve and move up and being able to, make more of their time in poker and to hopefully have that translate into a better life for themselves.
Right.
But like it definitely helps me improve kind of the formation, like forming my thoughts in this insane brain. Like I might look, relatively kind of laid back and easygoing, but what's going on in here is just like
fireworks.
Too insane. Yeah. So before all this insanity like blurts out into the real world, like being able to form those thoughts in a way that allows me to effectively communicate with somebody is just so big. And not just in coaching, but like effective communication, I think helps you in every aspect of your life, right? Whether you're making friends, trying to meet girls, trying to negotiate whatever you're trying to negotiate, like being able to communicate it's essential to our species,
Yeah, absolutely. I experienced the same thing when I started coaching. And I thought that, especially when I was putting together courses and when I started coaching people, I thought, I want to be great at PLO so badly. Like, even if I don't know, I just felt like the worst case scenario was that I would, I was like, well, I could spend all this time doing a product or doing coaching, but I was like, the worst case scenario is that I get better at PLO and I'm able to explain it better. So I totally understand that. Absolutely.
It definitely, and one thing, sorry for cutting you off there, but one thing also that I think is really useful is it helps you to kind of see different parts of the game from like a beginner's mindset again. Yeah. And when you do that, while you're trying to explain a concept, you very often uncover this new approach or solution to a spot that, you never would have thought twice about had you just been in your regular grind mode.
Right. That's a good point. I actually have an interesting story about that. When I first started coaching, I think I was charging like, I don't know, $100 an hour, $60 an hour, or something like that. And there was this student that emailed me and he wanted lessons. And I said, okay, well, send me a video of your play. And so I'm going through his video, and this guy is just a complete fish, right? He seriously is playing like a 75, like 6. Something just terrible, okay? And so I'm thinking, at first I was thinking to myself, okay, well, you're not ready for coaching. You need to do some work on your own. But actually what was the more important takeaway was watching how someone who had that bad of stats played, because it was sort of like being able to see the game through the eyes of a fish, like talking to him, right? Because you saw, for example, like there's never a situation where I'm playing a 6-max game and I'm going to be V-pipping 75%, right? But it was kind of fun to see like, wow, this is how it would be, and this is how other players are attacking me, and I see how I never really have anything, and like it was actually kind of interesting. And you're right, you see if you have enough students, you see different approaches, you see different things work, you see different things that don't work, you understand how people think about the game, you see what level people are stuck in, and it helps you break down players in the end. I totally agree.
Yeah, it sounds like have you seen that movie Being John Malkovich?
No. Well, no? I've heard of it, but I've never seen it yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like going into the mind of the man. Sounds like you had the sneak peek into that. But yeah, that's cool.
It was cool, man. So I want to move on to our next question. I've coached more than 300 people. I know you've coached a lot of students as well. And just being around the PLO market has made me realize that practically everyone wants to find out how to gain a more consistent win rate and eventually move up in stakes. There's nobody wants to spend so much time in poker and play the same stakes forever. They want to make more money, of course. So from your experience, what's the one thing that's holding most micro or low stakes players back from improving their game and moving up? And this could even be like break even mid stakes guys or something like that.
Right. So I think what it is a lack of consistency in their study. Mm-hmm. So they'll, like, if things are going well, people tend to play more when they're winning, and maybe they study more, or maybe the study just falls by the wayside. And then when things aren't going well, they just lose sight of everything, and their study just totally disappears in some instances. And it's the lack of consistency, I think, that keeps you kind of from being able to move up. And I don't count, like, as good as some of the training site videos are, like on Run It Once and things like that. Like, that, there's very, very good stuff out there. But watching Run It Once videos 5 days a week isn't going to help you as much as just putting your ass in the chair and like running sims and running Poker Juice and running Pro Poker Tools.
Right.
Even if it's for like 10 or 15 minutes a day from the hands you marked the day before, and just like double checking that your equity's sound there.
Yeah.
It's the little things, and it's the stuff that I think doesn't get mentioned because it's not sexy. It's just the boring, grinding stuff that really helps you improve.
Right. I'd like to add a couple of items to that. So one is that I always tell my players, like, because a lot of people ask, what's the ratio of playing to grinding? And I always say, well, are you trying to get really great at studying poker? Are you trying to get great at playing poker? And if you're trying to get good at playing poker, you need to fucking play poker, right? Like, you actually need to put in the hands and get used to what opponents do on which boards, and really breaking things down. And it kind of also... I was listening to an audiobook the other day, and it was actually a dating and relationships book. And it's funny because it was talking about approaching women. Okay? And he was saying how there's a lot of people out there who buy like a ton of dating and relationships books, but then never go out on dates and like never approach women because they feel like they get attached to the idea that they're doing something when they're going through these materials. And these books and these resources, most of them anyway, they don't teach you to actually take action. And I feel that in poker training, it's actually pretty similar. And I was actually in the same kind of rut, right? When I first started out, I loved watching poker training videos. I loved reading books. I really loved learning about poker. But as far as I kind of would get all worked up about it and think that I was this great poker player in my mind, but I actually wasn't that good at playing poker. I could break down a hand, but as far as executing a good bluff, getting thin value when I was supposed to, managing my tilt, I actually wasn't very good at it. And that was something that I feel you can't really teach, that really comes from putting, as you mentioned it, I think, putting your ass in the chair and doing it yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a big reason for that is poker is, I think, one of those few things that, your game day also doubles as practice time. Whereas if you're a basketball player, game day, you're playing, practice is practice, as Allen Iverson would say.
Yeah. And
then the game is your time to perform. But poker, you need to perform and learn as you play. And the study on its own is crucial, especially in 2017, the way poker is, you just have to be studying also. But yeah, you will learn, especially if you're just starting out in PLO or less than a couple 100,000 hands, you're going to learn so much by just playing and seeing what the regs do, what the good regs do, what the bad regs do, what the fish do. Because you can go through all these solvers and whatever you want, and be unexploitably I should do this, but nobody's playing GTO and PLO right now.
Yeah.
Are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
There's so many variants, and people are trying to figure stuff out, and the game is constantly changing. And if you're behind the times on that, watching videos of how people are playing in those games isn't the same as you experiencing it for yourself.
Right. That's a lot of good points. And I think that another kind of barrier that players have is they think, oh, when I buy this course or when I do this or when I do that, like I'll be good at PLO. It's kind of like, again, like this is what this relationships book was talking about, but I thought it had a lot of parallels to poker. As he was saying, like a lot of people will say, oh, when I read this book, I'll like ask this girl out, or when I do this or whatever. So it was pretty interesting, and I thought it had a lot of applicability. That's really good. So, and you kind of just covered this briefly, but what are you doing nowadays to improve your game? Or more specifically, tell me what a day in the life of Sean Koppel looks like when you're in grind mode. So, like, for example, I know you're going to probably be on the grind in Scoops next month, but take me through, like, kind of what does a day look like for you?
Yeah, sure. So I try to like keep a consistent schedule, like times when I want to be grinding, times when I need a break and try and go to the gym or whatever. Lately, it's kind of been all over the place with me playing kind of later night sessions and things like that. But I definitely try and schedule things like the day ahead. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily like in a calendar, but just kind of like a journal where I'm like, okay, this is what I want to get done. This is what I'm planning to do in the morning. This is what I'm going to do in the afternoon, this at night type of thing.
Right.
And so usually I try and do like either something working on study or coaching early in the morning, take a break to kind of let my mind relax, go get some lunch, drink some coffee, watch some Brazilians walk by.
There you go.
It might be.
Yeah.
Lately I've been just going to the beach for, like, I live 4 blocks from the beach, so I just kind of take a walk and go plant my feet in the sand and stretch for 10 or 15 minutes, get my Zen on,
right.
And then I'm kind of ready to come back home and start like the second half of the workday.
So how do you view, because I heard something the other day, and it was talking about how table selection and seat selection, all of that is a big, is just like a big component of being a big winner in online. So let's say that you go get your Zen on and you do your daily routine and then you come back. So how do you judge? Let's say like literally you're firing up the lobby. How do you pick your tables? How do you decide how long you're going to play for? When do you decide to quit? What does that all look like?
Sure. So I mean, definitely have color codes for different players. Multiple ones for regs, multiple different ones for fun players.
Sure.
And try and get on wait lists and open tables for good spots there. As far as like the length of the session, I'm playing fewer and fewer tables these days. So now I'm playing around like 5 or 6 at most. And that kind of helps me play longer sessions because I'm not so mentally drained. It's not like nonstop decision making, not always at least. So I think ideally for me, like my perfect session time is 3 hours, but if the games are really good and I'm feeling good, then I don't have a problem just extending that. But I think to regularly, for a cash game player at least, to regularly be playing like 5-6 hour sessions in one go is not the best way to approach it.
Right, which is different for me because I've been playing a lot of live, and I'm routinely playing like 10-hour, 15-hour sessions even. But it's a lot slower. You play a hand, there's a break. It's not as, most of the time it's not shorthanded. So it's different, it's a lot different.
Yeah, plus you can like take 10, 15 minutes to like go to the bathroom or chill out or do whatever, I think, when you're playing live, whereas online in 10 or 15 minutes you just get booted off your tables very often.
Yep. Exactly.
And so, yeah, I think, even like if you want to play like a 6 or 7 hour session online, like great, but split it up into 2 chunks, even if it's like taking a 30-minute break.
Got it.
A 20-minute break.
Got it. Yeah, I've always felt that too, like short sessions. It's like my longest online sessions are always huge losers. But if I'm consistent and I'm in a good routine, then 2 hours, I'm focused. Like, here's my limit. I'm going to play great for these 2 hours. I'm mentally focused. I'm not, but then like once I kind of notice myself checking out and thinking about doing other things and responding to texts and just being disengaged, it's time to quit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a perfect, like to know yourself that well is really crucial. And like if you start to notice these little signs, it's good that you pick up on it and you're like, okay, that's enough for right now.
Yeah, usually for me the mental cue is if I'm even considering quitting, right? Where it's like, oh, should I quit? Like, I don't know, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? It's usually I should quit. But like sometimes you can talk yourself into not quitting if the games are great. And you're like, I mean, I'm not quitting. I have to just stay.
Right.
So, all right, we talked about this a second ago, but I've gotten it written down, and it's a common enough and an important enough question. I think we should touch on it a little bit more. So,
Sure.
I want to talk a little bit more about the ratio of playing to study. So, specifically for someone who's transitioning from No Limit to starting fresh playing PLO. I mean, a moment ago we talked about people who kind of do this as a lifestyle, but I want to talk about people who are a little more green. What would you say to people? Like, what would you tell them how to most effectively use their study time devoted to poker? Or what have you found to be the right balance? I mean, I know that you just said you like, and you're like me, I always say play as much as possible, right? Like in the very early stages, like I think that you should be playing a lot. I personally recommend people don't study more than like an hour a day at the most. I think that you really should be trying to put in volume as much as you can. Find a stake that you're comfortable grinding and putting in volume and not really sweating the outcome, and do it that way. But what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think your advice is spot on. Like, get the screen time, get the hands in at a place where the results don't matter so much for you, just to get kind of your land legs, in PLO.
Right.
And I think that hour a day, that like 5 hours a week is enough in those early stages. And I think something just like reviewing your hands, where marking hands during your session where you're like, ooh, I'm not sure, like, should I have gotten that in? Should I have folded there? Those kinds of spots, like you can just mark them, forget about them while you're playing, and then go back to them. Probably not right after your session, because it still might be kind of fresh in your mind, but like the day after, when you can look at it from like a clear perspective.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've found people say, or some of the complaints that students say is they don't really actually know why they're not very good. And I think that it actually is kind of challenging when you're just starting, where everything seems kind of confusing and it seems like you have leaks everywhere. But as challenging as it may be, I always tell them to start with your biggest weakness, or the thing that you're losing the most money on. When you're in like the earlier stages of development, it may be something as broad as pre-flop. But try to narrow it down to, is it 3-bet pots? Is it 3-bet pots out of position? And work on one thing at a time. Otherwise, it's going to get overwhelming. Because a big mistake that a lot of players make when they come to me, they say, oh man, I'm not very good at PLO, or I'm having a lot of trouble at PLO, like fix me. And actually the best students always come to me with a specific area to work on, which is what I do with my coach too. Like when I meet with my coach, I say, hey, I'm really having trouble check calling the river with bluff catchers, or like I'm really having trouble playing this one specific spot. Like I've got 15 hand histories here where like, we're playing paired boards, or we're playing monotone boards. Like I want to just nail this one topic. And that's when it's good. So I think that if you're looking to approach it from a learning perspective, learn to build out your game starting with your biggest weakness.
Yeah, I agree. And that's kind of something I do in my own study. Is like I tend to do my hand reviews, and then I watch some videos to complement my study. Like watching videos, I think like it is incredibly useful as a complement to your poker study. But if like it can't be the sole thing you're doing trying to improve besides playing.
Sure.
And so I think, like you said, like identifying these topics you want to explore, and not spending like just an hour going over like some hands, but really kind of doing these deep dives into certain theories.
Yeah.
Like for example, right now I'm working with a coach in 3-bet pots in these shorter stack to pot ratio scenarios.
Yep.
About like what should we be pot calling.
Right.
Should we be checking back the flop more than the population is right now? It's like these different ideas that you may or may not have thought of before.
Right.
And just exploring these different avenues, I think is really crucial. And doing these deep dives and spending a week, 2 weeks on certain topics, and
right.
going into your sessions with those things in mind is going to help you, I think, actively improve. So like for my example, like these 3-bet pots where I'm looking like, okay, like thinking about c-betting versus checking back, or betting out of position versus checking, like really having that at like the front of your mind. I think going into a session with one thing you want to work on,
Yep.
and focusing on that while still paying attention to the rest of your game that you've already developed, right?
Right.
Is a really good kind of active learning process.
Right. No, that's brilliant. I couldn't agree more. All right, so I want to jump back into more of a lifestyle topic, actually. Now,
Sure.
The other day you told me on Skype that you see poker as the ultimate path to freedom. Can you expand on what you meant by that? Or, and even deeper, how do you suggest other players follow that path, given the current landscape of poker?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think it's different for everybody, right? Like people have different hobbies, different interests, different places they would want to live. For example, like I grew up in California. I don't like cold weather. I know you're in
Denver,
Colorado.
Yeah.
So it might not be like the perfect lifestyle destination for me, but for a lot of people who love the outdoors, love the snow, all that, like it's perfect, right?
Right.
So yeah, each person has their own things, and I actually remember a quote that one of my other friends who's been in poker for a long time told me a long time ago, and he said, "Poker is a hard way to make an easy living."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, I think he's spot on. And what I think of when I say that poker allows you the ultimate freedom, it's that you don't have to spend, or you shouldn't be spending every waking moment, thinking about grinding and studying, and making the most of your opportunities. Like you want to be professional and spend time on that, but not allow yourself to be consumed by it, because you see a lot of miserable people probably wherever you are, walking around like drones and zombies,
Sure.
Going to work, back from work, and poker is very isolated as a job, and being able to kind of complement that to kind of balance out your life, I think it's important. And you have so many advantages. You don't have to commute. You have a better hourly than you probably would have had doing whatever else you could do.
Certainly.
You got to make your own schedule, and the whole point of all this isn't so you can sit in your chair mindlessly browsing Reddit some more on the internet with your free time. It's so you can take advantage of all this extra time that you have in your day to if you like playing basketball, to go play ball, if you want to work out, if you want to go to the bar with your friends, you have this freedom of choice that the majority of people, even in really developed countries, don't have.
Sure.
And I think it's important to, in a game that is so, it takes a toll for sure, downswings and all this, the grinding, it takes a toll on professional poker players, and being able to balance it out is mandatory, I'd say, to long-term success.
For sure. I have similar viewpoints. I've been really grateful to been able to be introduced to poker. It's definitely given me the ultimate freedom. I've traveled the world. I've been to some of the best parties in the world. I've made money. I've met really cool people. I've worked from wherever I wanted. I did something that was exciting. And furthermore, I think I really value being an entrepreneur. And I think that it's poker is great training for being an entrepreneur. And I think that it's one reason why you see a lot of the high-stakes guys or people who have been successful in poker transitioning into entrepreneurialism. You see them, being involved in startups. And because it gives you a really great mindset to think objectively from an equity standpoint about different situations when you have incomplete information solving these situations that a lot of people aren't able to solve because they get emotionally wrapped up into it. You know what I mean? So I think
for sure.
I've been really grateful in that way, and also on the emotional side of it. You said that downswings are hard. Yeah, fuck yeah, downswings are hard, especially because you have to go through it on your own. It's can't. It's pretty rare where you're not going to be able to complain about it to your girlfriend or your wife or your friends because they're not going through it right now, and it can be difficult in that way. But on the other end of it, I think the guys who get through it the most take responsibility for it. It makes you work hard, and especially when you grind your way out of a downswing, It makes you feel better about yourself too. And every downswing that you overcome and come out of the other side of, it makes the next one easier. Certainly. It's like,
sure.
oh, well, I mean, whatever. I've gotten out of downswings before, and I can objectively say I'm playing well, or I can objectively say I'm playing not well. And I will say that actually few things give you more confidence than playing well in a downswing. So if you can actually not lose your mind, and you can play well through it, it actually can be a really good thing for your game.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like being able to build that grit and that resiliency through that downswing is, it's a great life skill to have, and obviously, you need to have it in poker, especially if you're playing PLO.
Yep, for sure. So, I want to jump back into strategy talk and start to wrap up the interview, but not before we actually talk about what is your expertise right now. You've got a couple of courses available on your site, PLOmastery.com, that I know you wanted to talk about for a bit. But, before we get to that, let's chat for a while about specifically PLO MTTs. Because realistically, they're kind of a mystery to even high-stakes cash players. Fundamentally, they're different from no-limit tourneys because there's no antes. And furthermore, big PLO tourneys actually don't really run that often, like the 5K plus buy-in PLO tournaments I'm referring to. I only play PLO MTTs during the WSOP or other major tourney stops. I've certainly never met a so-called professional PLO MTT player. But there's a lot of money to be made, right, in PLO MTTs. And if you're looking to play them during the Scoop or WSOP, it's definitely worth checking out some quality strategy on it. So I want you to spend a few minutes talking about kind of your general approach to MTTs, maybe the specific approaches that make your style or your teaching style unique. And also talk about where you think most players have big leaks and how your course approaches solving that.
Sure. So, I will preface this with saying, I don't think PLO MTTs are going to overtake no-limit MTTs.
Yeah, no
and
way.
I definitely don't recommend trying to make a living just grinding PLO MTTs.
Right.
That said, they are a very profitable complement to a good or, pretty good PLO cash game player. And also for a no-limit MTT grinder. I've seen in the Stars MTTs that there's, some of those no-limit MTT crushers have gotten quite competent and good at PLO, to the point where they're beating some mid-stakes cash games, I would guess.
Wow.
Because and so going back to the MTTs though, the potential for a higher ROIs is huge because it's just a far less advanced and developed game compared to no limit, and the combinatorics are exponentially higher. You can go probably be a winner in $55 online MTTs and 2K WSOP events by just knowing pre-flop hand charts. You just have one on your cell phone. Okay, shove fold.
Yeah.
You're good to go. But yeah, I think for PLO MTTs, knowing how to play post flop is just a generally solid, fundamentally sound PLO post flop game is gonna take you a long way. And so my general approach is not to try and force anything in the tournaments. Don't feel like you have to make moves and stuff like that because especially early on, it basically plays like a cash game,
right?
And the fields are so soft compared to no limit that you find yourself in spots where you can extract your edge, and this is where I think PLO variance helps the good PLO player because a lot of players you can mash buttons and just run like Jesus and build up a stack in PLO MTTs even if you're not good.
Sure.
And so that's what I think makes them so fun also, right? That's why PLO is more fun than no limit.
Right.
And so I think as the stack sizes start to shrink, that's actually where people start to mess up really badly. And that's where the cash game players, I think, start to mess up quite badly as well. Because they don't have the adjustment to the shorter stack sizes.
So how would you compare the two? Is that the biggest difference between no limit and PLO tournaments? And, how do you adjust?
Yeah, I think as far as the pre-flop game is concerned, like it's a massive, massive difference because, yeah, I mean, equities run way closer and like people just don't fold because you have 4 cards, right? I mean, it's a bit of a simplification, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, and also like if you call in a bad spot in no limit, like you steal with like ace 7 off and call off, 22 big blinds to a jam, like you can be hosed.
Yeah.
You can have like 20%. In PLO, like whatever you have has, on average against a range, not going to fare worse than 40% very often.
Sure.
And so there's less. I mean, there are hands you need to like fold to 3-bets because they just flop terribly. Like they don't have a good flop distribution, and you never get the, like when you do hit, you're not deep enough to extract anything. And so there are spots where you do need to like raise fold. But the re-steal stuff, like it is a big mistake to, I think, try and like semi-bluff at 20 big blind stacks or 30 big blind stacks with, your double suited rundown when the guy can just call and call when he hits a flop.
Sure.
And so it becomes a much more linear, I think, opening strategy and a much more linear 3-betting strategy where you're just trying to like go for the value part of a range. So like you're looking for hands, you want to identify hands that are ahead of, this X% opening range from this position.
Right. No, that makes sense.
And like if you are deeper, you have that maneuverability to be able to like 3-bet bluff. And like there is a massive difference like on the bubble in PLO tournaments compared to no limit because of this also. And I think like the ICM considerations in PLO are like a lot more severe because like there's some instances in like no limit tournaments, for example, where you would need like 70% in certain spots to be shove or call a shove.
Yeah.
And you like obviously just don't have that come up in PLO MTTs, and so like very often you just can't 3-bet aces.
Yeah.
Because the guy's gonna have 40-45%,
and he's not folding.
And if you're like a lock to make the money or make like the next big pay jump at the final table, 60% isn't enough in a lot of those spots.
Totally. No, that makes sense. And it's funny because I played the 10K PLO and the 25K PLO last year at the World Series.
I heard those were some fun tournaments.
They were great.
Softer than expected.
Yeah, I thought the 25K. I mean, for a 25K, it was kind of soft. The 10K was, it's like the softest 10K of the year, they say. And I look back at some of the spots, and it basically were like I got huge stacks both times, and kind of just played it like a cash game, and I didn't really play it like a tournament. So I think that this year that'll be like my approach: is play a little bit more, play a little bit slower for sure. Don't play like a cash game. But I definitely like it. I mean, I always kind of start off with the approach that tight is right. You should generally play tighter in PLO tournaments because there's no antes, because they're generally softer, and just being in the tournament, especially if you're a skilled player, is worth a lot. So that's. I mean, what do you think about that? Let's say, actually, let me phrase this in a better way. Let's say that we're walking through the Rio, right, and somebody, it's at the World Series, and somebody grabbed you and was like, Sean, I bought your product. I fucking love it. But I'm going to play this 1K PLO. I've got 1 minute. Can you tell me how would you go play this 1K PLO tournament? What would you tell them? What would be the 3 things that you would tell them? Real quick. You only have a minute.
Man, put me on the spot here. Okay. 3 things.
It doesn't have to be 3. Just what would you tell them? You'd say, I can tell you what I'd say personally. I'd say, hey, play tight. Look for the players that are easy to steal from, and look for the players who aren't very good and get value from them. At least in the beginning, and then wait till you're short. And I mean, because actually, I feel like in PLO tournaments, if you have 10 big blinds, it's actually kind of a lot, especially in a full ring PLO tournament because there's no antes.
Yeah, you can survive a long time, and you just see repeatedly people punting off with they just shove in the cutoff because now they have a chance to just open it with 4, 5, 7, 8 single suited, and it's I mean, if you just run where that hand ranks, it's not a good hand. If you're stealing 60% of hands, that's in there, but like I mean the block. So like your list is very good, and then I'll add on to that like just playing like you mentioned like playing tight, but yeah, playing like the value hands more straightforward. Yeah, I think just playing more straightforward, just value range, value town people, and identify like who is not adjusting their pre-flop ranges based on these shrinking stack sizes.
Yeah.
And like, if you have ace, queen, queen, let's say you have like ace, queen, queen, 6, and you have 15 big blinds, and like under the gun, because these are like the World Series ones, I think are 8 or 9 max, right?
The 10K and 25K are 8 max, and I think the 1K and the 1500s are 9 max.
Okay. So like an under the gun opening range should be like 10% or something like that.
Really tight.
And if somebody's opening a like linear 10%, your ace, queen, queen, you should just fold with 12 big blinds. But if some guy's 10% range, let's say he's still opening 10%, but he includes like 6, 7, 8, 9 in that, then it's like value jam time.
Sure.
And identifying those players who don't like, who have these fucked up pre-flop ranges.
Yep.
You get to extract like a huge amount of value. And again, like huge amount of value, like 60-40.
No, I get it. No, but you know, in PLO, especially when you're short, that can be big. And it's interesting. It brings up a good point because last year, in order to prepare for the tournaments, because I'm telling you, there's not really PLO material out there. So I was like, well, what should I do this year? I was like, all right, well, here's what I'll do. I'm going to watch the final tables of the 10K and 25K PLO from 2015, and I'm going to see what the good players do. And I was actually like blown away by how tight everyone was. And like, because I was thinking like, hey, these are the best players in the world. Like, they're going to be going to fucking war. You're like, when you watch no limit tournaments with the same type of players, there's a lot of aggression. There's a lot of pre-flop bluffing, and people are just kind of going off. But actually, in both the 10K and 25K PLO, I noticed the really great players like were very tight and making some unbelievable folds. But I'm like, it made me think. I'm like, wow, like that. You must have to play really freaking tight in these when you get short. And then granted, like this was at an 8 max table, and yeah, like there's a lot of ICM considerations, and it is what it is. But it was pretty eye opening for me to see that, because I was like, wow, I've been playing way too aggro.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you know what you got to do to win another bracelet not next year. This
year, man. Don't do me like that. Don't even put that out in the universe, bro.
Sorry, man. We're in different seasons here in Brazil. We're in the fall and like summer, all backwards.
No, it's cool.
I might be there though.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'd love to meet up. Yeah, and that's I
gotta update my Hendon mob because like I remember you were asking earlier about like why do you think you're qualified to talk about MTTs, and if you look at my Hendon mob page, there's like one cache from like 2008 when I was still in college. Not sure if I wanted to be a poker pro, and like the next update was last year at EPT Barcelona for 2 PLO events, and that's it. That's like an 8-year gap.
Ballin'. But online results, and it's okay. I mean, whatever. I'm sure it's better than what's out there, which is nothing. So, yeah, and I wanted to wrap up the interview kind of by you telling us, what's next for you, and do you plan on playing the World Series? And tell us a little bit about your site and how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. So the site is PLOmastery.com, and if you want to sign up, it's totally free. You can get my introductory videos on the common leaks that a lot of no-limit players make when they start to transition over. One's a pre-flop video, one covers some post-flop mistakes. And that'll kind of help anybody who's totally fresh, and even someone who's maybe got some experience but maybe doesn't know what leaks they have. This one might identify a couple for them.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the World Series goes, still up in the air, but I'd say it's a 2-1 favorite. Right?
Yes. So give us the PLO hand that you've got, and give us the PLO hand that the World Series has right now to make it 2-1, 66-33.
We've got Ace, King, King 9 double suited against the Ace King. Against the King Jack 10-9.
All right, we'll take it. We'll take that all day. Cool, bro. Nice. Well, thank you for joining us. And, I'm sure Sean will be in the comments answering questions. And, again, if you need to get a hold of him, check out his site, PLOmastery.com. Thanks for joining us, Sean. I appreciate it, man.
All right, man. Yeah, it was good chatting to you, John.
Absolutely.